Hey everybody, Tom Sykes, the Royalist here. Hope you're doing well. So there was this incident yesterday when Harry announced at the last minute that he was going to be doing a tour of Canada, one of these quasi-royal tours that Harry and Meghan have kind of become famous for. And the timing, it's fair to say, raised some eyebrows amongst, at the palace, amongst journalists who were pretty shocked by the chutzpah, one might call it, of the timing, because they announced it literally as William arrived in Rio de Janeiro for the Earthshot Prize, which is literally the biggest and most important event of his whole year. The Earthshot is this thing where he gives £1 million to 5 charities that are trying to invent technology that'll save the planet, basically, or help make the planet a more environmentally sound place. And, it's a really cool initiative. And it's also the kind of core project of William. It's like his signature project. So it definitely caused sharp intakes of breath all around. So when Harry announced at exactly the same time that he was going to be doing a tour of Canadian military charities, obviously the military is a field that Harry's very strong on, that he can speak on with a lot of credibility due to having actually seen active service, unlike many of his royal family compatriots. His brother, was in the sort of life-saving service in North Wales. I mean, it was great what he was doing, the air ambulance in East Anglia, but it's not exactly flying an Apache helicopter. So I think Harry is on strong ground here when he, demands to still be associated with veterans charities. But there is no denying that the timing of that announcement was incredibly provocative. And so then we get William late last night. It's now Tuesday that I'm recording this. On Monday evening, William's down on Copacabana Beach. He's playing beach volleyball. He's kicked off his shoes. He's, and it was. He's playing with this Brazilian Olympian, Carolina Solberg. He said he's amazing to play with. He's so tall and he's so great. And, the scene I felt was very shrewdly put together by William's people. And indeed, I think it was useful for the whole monarchy after a week that's been dominated by the Andrew thing. Charles just looks more and more frail, dealing with his cancer. Like the narrative around the royal family has become one of an ailing royal family that is floundering to cope. And here's William, basically saying, no, none of that's true. We're amazing. We're, smashing the ball and looking hunky and blah, 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 blah. And that's not necessarily how I view it, but, that's definitely how those pictures have gone around the world. And so I think there was irritation, there was definite irritation amongst his camp and amongst his friends, who I spoke to. One former courtier just told me, it's not subtle, and said that they had this interesting point that the palace never sees coincidence. It just sees choreography. So I thought that was quite interesting. But what I wanted to talk about in this special that I'm recording is how the events of yesterday and today is Tuesday and tomorrow, Wednesday, when the Earthshot Prize is actually presented, is when Harry is actually going to be doing his event. So it is a serious provocation. And it's a reminder that the feud between these brothers is far from over. Although Harry has made significant steps to heal the rift with his father, the feud with his brother I feel, is as hot and as poisonous and as dangerous as it ever was. Just to go back a bit and remember how all this started. So there were rumours when Meghan first came over to the UK, certainly that I heard, that everybody heard, that things were not well. And these were very much denied by the palace at the time. Journalists were told we were all imagining it, that we were making it all up, that it was all rubbish, that it was all scandalous, and etc., etc., etc. Then, in 2019, Harry and Meghan give an interview to ITV journalist Tom Bradby, and they're asked about the state of the relationship with his brother. And he says, we're certainly on different paths at the moment. And that absolutely ended the myth of the inseparable princes, which really had lived very much in the public imagination since before, since they were little boys. They'd always been pictured together, and certainly since the death of Diana. And it was not a fabrication. Like, they were incredibly close. They did support each other after the death of Diana, and they were very, very close. Their father was pretty distant, pretty preoccupied with his own affairs, the own things that he had to do, that he had to get on with. And the boys certainly lent on each other to a significant extent. So this was a big change, that, this feud that we'd all been reporting on for several months was actually true. And for Harry to confirm it, I think was probably the first great media misstep in what I think has been a series of media missteps by Harry that have resulted in, frankly, him being reviled by many people around the world, accused of disloyalty, I think fairly, and he had his reasons, but he did not, in my opinion, have his reasons to go public with all these allegations and cause so much damage to William, to Kate, to his father, so much sadness to his father, to his grandmother, to his grandfather. There were a lot of people who got damaged, upset emotionally by Harry and Meghan, by the way that they went so public with it. I think it's fine to have a disagreement with your family, to have an argument with your family. We all do. What I don't think fine is to go on television and accuse unspecified members of your family of being racists, to write books, accusing your brother's wife basically of being a cold, heartless person who won't even lend you a dab of lip gloss. And all these things. I think that every step of the way, I accept fully Harry's point, made repeatedly in Spare and made repeatedly by his friends and allies ever since, that this was his chance to answer back to years of briefing against him, and that he could have done the same thing and just briefed anonymously. I do understand that argument, and I hear that argument, but I don't accept it, because I think that if you go out and say something on the record as a member of the royal family, it's very different to it appearing in the newspaper briefed by sources. That's what I just think. Anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself, because 2019, we have the Bradby interview. 2020, January 20, comes out over Christmas that they're leaving, reported in The Sun, first of all, by Dan Wootton. January 2020, the Sandringham Summit formalizes the whole thing, formalizes the split. The Queen refuses basically to give them anything that they want. She won't give them half in, half out. She forbids them from using the term royal in any commercial applications at all. She takes away their HRHs, and they are pretty well sent away with a flea in their ear. They are also, very importantly, stripped of their security coverage, which will, as we know, become one of Harry's greatest resentments and bugbears and arguments, that he's been treated unfairly in the years to come. Fundamentally, I think that the Queen behaved very correctly, because she behaved decisively and she behaved strongly. If we look at the dithering that has taken place over Prince Andrew after the last 3 years, it's absolutely pathetic. I know the Queen was partly responsible for the Andrew situation, but Charles absolutely failed to learn the lesson of Queen Elizabeth at Megxit, which is that you have to deal with these things quickly. The quicker it is done, the better. So Anyway, that was January 2020. We have the Freedom Flight, where they depart from Heathrow in the rather ironically the Windsor Lounge, which is what the VIP lounge at Heathrow is called. A reminder, a foreshadowing, perhaps, for Harry, that much as he wants to leave this family behind and escape it, he'll actually find that very, very hard over the years to come. So while the Bradby interview cracked the veneer, the following years absolutely shattered the whole structure of that relationship and that friendship between the brothers. And they descended into a state of open warfare that I think very few people could have ever imagined. And of course, that sadness was shared by King Charles, who called the boys together after Prince Philip's funeral and admonished them both for the feud, saying, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." And of course, that plaintive request is very much directed at both of them. Charles's own quandary in all of this, I suppose, is that really he'd actually, on a personal level, got on with Harry better, really, than he'd got on with William. And to this day, the relationship with William is still kind of fraught. And I think that William's refusal to meet his brother halfway in the way that the king has done has antagonized that and made it worse. Then, of course, so off they went to America. And then in 2021, the Oprah Winfrey special, March 2021, in which the absolutely earth-shattering allegations of racism were made. This provoked the only official response ever to Harry and Meghan's claims, which was Queen Elizabeth saying, "Recollections may vary," as we all remember her saying. William asked about whether they were a racist family the day after the interview dropped, said, "We are very much not a racist family." Other than that, they've said nothing on the record. Privately, I was told by a close friend of William's, William F. word hates them. That's what I was told by a really reliable source who knows both the brothers, and again told me about how sad it was of the rift that had grown between them when they'd been so close as teenagers and boys and all of that stuff. So as if the Oprah interview wasn't bad enough, it came out literally as Prince Philip was dying. This went down very, very, very badly at the palace, where people just thought it was incredible that Harry, who'd had such close relationship and such friendship and respect for his grandfather over the years, would do this while he was lying on his deathbed. And I have to say that I completely agree. I think that the negative feelings that people have towards Harry and Meghan would have been massively lessened if they had waited until both the Queen and Prince Philip had died before making them. I think that people feel very differently about Charles, the way they do feel about felt about Elizabeth. I think people felt protective about Elizabeth in a way, and I think it was very, very foolish of Harry and Meghan to set themselves up in opposition to Queen Elizabeth II, because that is a battle you are never going to win. You're never, ever going to win that battle. The pattern repeated throughout 2022 and 2023, basically. The irony of all of this was that when Harry and Meghan had left the royal family, or the institution, as they tend to refer to it, they'd made this big deal about how they were going to be the voice of compassion, the voice of responsible storytelling. They weren't going to be interested in clickbait or anything like that. It was only going to be good, honest, uplifting stories that uplift communities and all this kind of stuff. And then they produced literally this tirade of invective, like saying everybody was saying they were racist, saying they were cruel, saying they were heartless, saying they were mean, saying they were buttoned up, they were stiff upper lip, that they were made to curtsy, that, and all these incredible, verifiably false claims made, especially by Meghan, in the broadcast, that she'd never known who the royal family were. Well, apart from the picture of her outside Buckingham Palace when she was a teenager, that she had no idea that Harry's grandmother was the Queen. That it went on and on, that they'd got married 3 days before they got married. I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury actually had to deny that one, which was pretty shocking. And yet, I think partly because of the culture at the time, the culture has shifted quite a bit since, I would say, since 2022, 2023. We've become a little less tolerant of my truth and your truth. We've maybe more believe in the truth, which I think I think they were, they were aided by, I hesitate to use the word, but they were aided by the prevailing woke culture of the time, basically. And that it was still the tail end of Me Too, and there was definitely a feeling at that time that to present yourself as a victim equated being a victim. And I think that they did undeniably milk that victim status, and that it had been so hard, and that they'd been mistreated, and they'd been driven to the edge of suicide and all that. And I think that privately, perhaps people felt this was a bit rich, given they were living in a $14 million house in California and had a lovely Netflix deal worth 100 million quid and blah, blah. But I think there was a reticence to speak out about it. And of course, one person who did speak out about it was Piers Morgan, who got fired from his job. Apparently, after Meghan intervened and said that she thought it was unacceptable that he'd questioned her account on his breakfast TV show in the UK. Well, Piers Morgan's had the last laugh. He's now a huge YouTube figure, as we know, and makes much more money than he ever made with ITV. I think that what was very interesting as well was that we saw the sort of sinews and the structure and the skeleton of the feud in these early days of how it would play out and how it has played out over the next 5 years. We had the vituperation and the noise and the fury from the Sussexes from California, and in the UK, it was just like, we're going to rise above it, we're going to keep calm and carry on. The Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, was apparently very influential in the inclusion of the line "recollections may vary" in the immediate response. She said that they would only have one chance to respond to it, and they needed to put it on record that they denied it, basically, that they denied what was being said against them. Other than that, they held their silence. They refused to engage. They were criticized in many quarters for doing that. People said that they should address the allegations and all these kinds of things. They didn't. They resorted to the old royal technique of never complain, never explain. Kate went out to the ballet, I think, 3 or 4 days afterwards, and was given a standing ovation and a round of applause. And I think that the British people certainly identified very closely with William and Kate and felt very outraged about what Meghan and Harry had said in the Netflix film from the beginning. Although I think also there was a sneaking feeling, I would say, and there that the royal family can be pretty vile to each other, that they do have arguments with each other, that they are in competition with each other. So I don't think it was that everybody just thought the royal family had never done anything wrong. I mean, I think we all know from Princess Margaret, she was having a cigarette and she couldn't find an ashtray. She'd call someone over and they had to put their hand out and she'd tap the ash in their hand. And we look back on that, I suppose, as charming eccentricity of, Ma'am Darling. But at the time, it might not have been so funny if you were a footman who was called over and you kept having to use your hand as a human ashtray. So I'm just saying that I do think that Harry and Meghan, did the wrong thing, like massively, especially given the health of Prince Philip, and then especially given the health of the Queen. I think they definitely did the wrong thing. And I think it's pretty unforgivable to say stuff about your family like that on television, unless you've actually said it to them first and thrashed it out with them first. If you've all had a chance to sit down, thrash it out and talk to them, and they still won't accept it, and you want to give an interview about it, I guess that's one thing. But that's not what happened. And then, of course, we go into 2022. There are all these rumors that Harry's written this memoir called Spare. And then the Queen dies in September. Harry happens to be in the UK for the Well Child Award. And this is when the feud goes to the next level, because Harry insists, by his own account in Spare, that Meghan is invited to Balmoral to join the grieving party. Charles flatly refuses. William flatly refuses. The aeroplane is left on the tarmac, as I reported at the time. And as people know who've read my story about the day of the Queen's death, it's a kind of issue that I'm very interested in. The aircraft is left on the tarmac, meaning that some people within the family blame Harry and Meghan for the fact that they missed the Queen's final breath. Now, I don't know if you can actually make that, if that case actually stands up to a watertight analysis, but it's interesting that's how people feel. This is how bad, this is how tense, this is how fractious all of the relationship became. And I think really after the Queen's death and Harry's poor behavior around that, demanding that Meghan be invited, when Meghan had literally used major public appearances to denigrate the institution that Queen Elizabeth had spent her whole life in service of. I'm not sure that Queen Elizabeth would have liked to look up from her bed, from her deathbed, and see Meghan Markle offering her sympathies and thoughts and prayers, given what Meghan had said about the Commonwealth being another version of empire, about the stiff upper lip being a totally outmoded way of living, and about, you know, basically the royal family being awful, musty bunch of old waxworks. And I'm paraphrasing there. So I think after that, things became very, very difficult. And I think they became set. Harry did apparently briefly consider not publishing his memoir Spare. He did call the office of his publisher and say that he wasn't going to publish it. But unsurprisingly, that didn't last. The book came out, and if anything, the feud kind of went to an absolutely new level. Charles kicked Harry out of his house, Frogmore Cottage, so that he wouldn't have a base in the UK. Harry launched this ongoing legal, well, it's now sort of allegedly kind of finished, the official part of it has finished, campaign for security. He wanted his armed British security back. The king's representatives have he accuses the king's representatives of having blocked that. The king says it's nothing to do with him, it's a matter for the Home Office. The feud that sort of took it to the next level. And then, of course, Catherine got cancer. Now, the Waleses have never directly, of course, they have never directly blamed Harry and Meghan, but for her ill health. But I mean, you don't have to talk to many of their friends before you get the very clear impression that they believe that the stress of dealing with Harry's betrayal badly affected Catherine's health and her mental health and William's mental health and the relationship between William and Catherine, which we don't, you know, is not talked about too much. But William is, you know, William's a tricky guy. He's a plain spoken guy. Catherine is pretty remarkable, kind of amenable kind of person who's always tried to walk the line, you know, and balance the responsibility of being queen with being a future queen with being a mother. But I don't think it's any secret that the relation, well, it is a secret, but it's an open secret, that the relationship between them has been fraught at times, and that, you know, William has been rumored to have something of a wandering eye. And I think that the pressure of the whole stress that they have been under over the past 5 years is, if you talk to sympathetic friends around them off the record, people who they know, who I know, who've spent time with them over the years, they definitely cite it as, you know, a cause of resentment amongst William and Kate. But if you talk to their friends, people around them, people who know them, without getting too much into the details or bogged down into the weeds of this, it's pretty clear that while they don't blame Harry and Meghan for everything that's happened between William and Kate over the past 5 years, including the health scares and the personal difficulties that they have had, they certainly would argue that being under all that pressure didn't help. And I think that it's important to understand that, and it's not often talked about for obvious reasons, but it's important to understand the context of that resentment from William as informing why he feels very upset that his father now seems to be ready to reconcile with Harry, and indeed has reconciled with Harry as far as we can tell. I'm told that Harry and the King are enjoying regular phone calls. We all saw Harry going into Clarence's house for a cup of tea and a slice of his beloved chocolate biscuit cake in September. And we also all saw William go to the other end of the country when Harry was in London in a very deliberate statement. The royals much prefer to show rather than tell, and their favorite way of showing is via geographical relocation. So I think that there had been a hope that there was going to be a period of détente, a period of quietness, a period of restraint over, over the next few months after Harry was granted that audience with the King. But there hasn't been. Harry has kept on his campaign, saying the men in suits are trying to block his relationship with his father, that he still deserves his security. And now we have this new provocation of doing something at Remembrance Day. Any of you who watched my video that I did yesterday will remember that I was talking about how important Remembrance Day is to the royals, and why not giving Harry his security is an important way that they can continue to guarantee that Harry doesn't show up in the UK on Remembrance Day and hijack Remembrance Day. And I think what we saw last night with Harry announcing that he was going to Canada for a whole bunch of Remembrance Day series, also very deliberately overshadowing, attempting to steal some of the attention off William. I think it's failed, to be honest. I think those photos on Copacabana Beach are going to go all around the world. And I think William looks cool and looks amazing in them. So I think the effort by Harry has notably failed. But it feels to William's friends and William's side that there was an attempt to steal the attention. It feels bad. It feels bad-tempered. It feels ill-advised. It feels petty by Harry. And I think it's a great shame, because I think that Harry had an opportunity at one stage in his life to be a really influential guy, a really influential figure. He could have done a huge amount of good, and instead he seems to have diverted all of his energy into this feud with his brother that will never end, because he will not apologize, and he's made it very clear that he will not apologize. As recently as a month or 2 months ago, I was told by a source in Harry's side that he will not apologize. He feels he has nothing to apologize for, that he did nothing wrong throughout the whole thing, that he was completely entitled to tell his story and spare the way he told it. And William will never drop his demand for an apology before Harry is allowed to participate in any form of royal life again, with the exception of the King's funeral. And I am told that Harry and Meghan will have a prominent place at the King's funeral. They will be part of it. They will be invited, and they will be given the due respect due to the King's son. But I tell you this, when Harry comes to the throne, I think it is impossible to imagine a world in which we still have Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. That is just not going to happen. I think there is a serious risk that the Harry and Meghan lose their titles and their HRHs, partly because Meghan has flouted the agreement not to use it, which gives William extra ammunition. And I think that the other thing is that as of after 7 p.m. on Thursday, the 29th of October, after King Charles removed the title from Prince Andrew. This thing that we've always been told was impossible to be done has been done. The title has been removed. The princely title has been stripped. A precedent has been set. It can be done, and it's in the gift of the king. And I think that this feud between these two brothers is now so poisonous, so deep-seated, so deep-rooted, that I would be very surprised if William allows Harry to keep those titles. And I think that Harry is very ill-advised to keep provoking his brother as he did this week and as he is doing this week by staging his own events, going head-to-head for global attention with the most treasured thing of William's reign, his signature initiative, his Earthshot Prize. So that's pretty much all I have to say for today about the feud between the two brothers. Thank you very much, Ben, for excellent production and video. Thank you very much to all of you for watching. Obviously, if you're watching on Substack, thank you for having subscribed to the Substack. It means a huge amount to me. If you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and that way I can continue keeping all my videos free. All I need is for you to like and subscribe, and then we can stay free. If you want to comment, if you want to give me hype points, that would be amazing. If you've enjoyed the video or feel you've learned anything new or anything like that, please do all those nice things for me. And if you really like it, sign up to become a free subscriber to my Substack. And if you really like it, sign up to become paid subscribers to my Substack. But all those things are non-compulsory. They are optional. This is free, and we're hoping it can stay free forever. Tom Sykes, goodbye.